Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Shawn Thinking Out Loud. I'm your host, Shawn Armstrong, coming to you live from my secret hideout in beautiful Brazil. Let me tell you, folks, the sun is shining, the caipirinhas are flowing, and the world of economics is as unpredictable as ever. Today, we're diving deep into some hot-button issues, the latest inflation reports, and what they really mean for all of us. We've just seen the latest inflation reports drop, and guess what? It's another instance where the mainstream liberal media seems to have missed the mark again. Remember all that chatter about how President Trump's tariffs could lead us straight into the heart of hyperinflation? Well, we're not seeing it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Instead of spiraling costs and economic doom, what we're witnessing is a rather surprising stabilization in prices that contradicts those dire predictions. Analysts have warned that imposing tariffs on imports would send shockwaves through our economy, leading to skyrocketing consumer prices and financial chaos. Yet here we are, looking at data that suggests many sectors are actually experiencing deflationary pressures, or at least a cooling off of price increases. It's almost as if the forecasts are written in haste, driven by a political bias, rather than guided economic analysis. The reality is more nuanced. While there are certainly areas where prices have risen, like energy and housing, other categories have remained surprisingly stable. This discrepancy raises questions about the accuracy of media narratives and highlights the importance of critically evaluating economic data instead of accepting sensationalized headlines at face value. In this complex landscape, it appears that sound economic principles and market adjustments are proving more resilient than some had anticipated. Making one wonder, what else might they be getting wrong? The Consumer Price Index, CPI, has shown just a slight uptick, which has certainly caught the attention of media outlets. And of course, our friends at MSNBC and CNN were quick to jump on this as evidence that the sky is falling. But let's dig deeper into what's really going on. A small increase in the CPI can often be blown out of proportion, creating unnecessary panic among consumers and investors alike. It's important to remember that fluctuations in inflation rates are a normal part of economic cycles. For instance, while prices for certain goods may rise, others might actually decrease, balancing out the overall impact on consumers' wallets. Moreover, factors such as seasonal changes or temporary supply chain issues can contribute to these minor adjustments in price levels. Instead of succumbing to alarmist headlines, it might be more prudent to take a step back and look at the broader economic indicators, like employment rates and wage growth, that paint a more complete picture of our economic health. So while a slight uptick in CPI might sound alarming at first glance, a closer examination reveals it's not necessarily indicative of an impending crisis, but rather just another day in the complex world of economics. So let's break this down a bit. The latest Consumer Price Index report revealed an increase of 2.7% year over year. Now, at first glance, that might sound significant, but let's take a moment to put it into perspective. When we compare this current figure to the dramatic spikes in inflation we experienced during 2021 and 2022, periods often characterized as hyperinflation under Biden's economic policies, it starts to look less alarming. Back then, families were grappling with skyrocketing prices across essential goods and services, from groceries to gas, causing real financial strain. This context is crucial because the narrative pushed by some on the left tends to gloss over those turbulent times, framing the current situation as dire without acknowledging the recovery we're witnessing now. It's essential to recognize that while inflation is a concern, one that needs careful management, it's not a return to those chaotic days. Instead, we should focus on how these numbers reflect broader economic trends and policies that are stabilizing the market rather than spiraling out of control. And here's something they won't tell you. The wholesale price index, the producer price index, came in flat. That's right, unchanged. This is crucial because it shows that the tariffs, which were initially expected to send shockwaves through the economy and lead to soaring prices, are not having the catastrophic effect that economists predicted. So what gives? Well, this surprising stability suggests that businesses are finding ways to absorb these costs rather than passing them on to consumers. Perhaps they're optimizing their supply chains or tapping into alternative materials. Who knows? But it certainly raises questions about the effectiveness of those tariffs in achieving their intended goals. Maybe it's a sign that companies are more resilient than we thought, or perhaps it hints at a deeper shift in market dynamics where inflationary pressures aren't as straightforward as they seem. It's almost like watching an intriguing game of chess unfold, where each move doesn't lead to the expected checkmate, but instead opens up new strategies and possibilities. As we delve deeper into these numbers, we may just uncover a narrative that challenges our assumptions about trade policies and their impact on our everyday lives. You see, the left is desperate to cling to their narrative, and it's almost palpable at this point. They warned us that hyperinflation was just around the corner, painting a dire picture of skyrocketing prices and economic ruin. Yet here we are, looking at a tame inflation report that suggests otherwise. Prices have stabilized, and many everyday items are not nearly as expensive as they predicted. Despite the evidence contradicting their claims, they're still trying to sound the alarm, clinging to their doomsday scenarios as if they were gospel truth. It's fascinating how some narratives can take on a life of their own, no matter what reality throws at them. They refuse to let go. This behavior is reminiscent of past predictions that never materialized, like the constant fear-mongering over gas prices or food shortages that turned out to be exaggerated. It makes you wonder, are they genuinely concerned about economic well-being, or are they more invested in maintaining a certain level of panic among the public? In a world where information travels faster than ever, it's crucial for us to sift through these narratives critically and rely on actual data rather than sensationalism. Let's take a moment to dive into the reactions from economists regarding the current state of tariffs and their implications on our economy. Bank of America has issued a cautionary note warning that these tariffs are not just abstract numbers floating in the ether. They are very much being felt at the cash register as businesses inevitably pass on these added costs to consumers. Meanwhile, Wells Fargo is posing an intriguing question: when can we expect to see the tangible effects of these tariffs on consumer spending patterns? It seems like everyone is bracing for what could be a tidal wave of inflation as a direct consequence of these trade policies. However, if they're anticipating a massive surge in price akin to a tsunami crashing into our shores, perhaps it's time for them to reassess their predictions. Historically, while tariffs do create ripples in pricing, the full-blown inflation scenario might not unfold as dramatically as some fear. Instead, what we might see is more of a gradual increase in costs, one that consumers will adapt to over time. So let's keep our eyes peeled and our wallets ready. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in real time. And I have to say, even Trump weighed in on this, suggesting that rates should be lowered immediately because our economy is doing well. Despite what the naysayers might claim, it's interesting to see such a prominent figure advocating for lower interest rates, especially when many analysts are quick to point out potential risks lurking beneath the surface. Trump's perspective seems rooted in the belief that a robust economy can handle such adjustments without adverse effects, echoing sentiments of optimism shared by various business leaders who argue that lower rates should spur further investment and innovation. After all, we look at the current job growth, rising consumer confidence, and increased spending patterns, it certainly paints a picture of economic vitality. However, as with any financial strategy, there are differing opinions. Some experts warn that cutting rates too soon could lead to inflationary pressures or create asset bubbles. It's a classic case of balancing hope with caution, isn't it? As discussions around this topic continue to unfold, it will be fascinating to see how policymakers navigate these waters and whether they heed calls for lower rates or take a more measured approach. Let me share a quote from President Trump that stuck with me. "We should have the lowest interest rate anywhere in the world." It's a bold statement that raises questions about how our economic policies align with this vision. When we think about it, low interest rates can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, they can stimulate borrowing and spending, making it easier for families to buy homes or for small businesses to invest in growth. This is particularly crucial in times of economic uncertainty, as lower rates can help kickstart recovery by encouraging investment and consumption. However, there's also the concern of what such low rates could mean for savers and retirees who rely on interest income. Moreover, maintaining the lowest interest rates globally might lead to potential imbalances. It could attract foreign investment, but also raise fears about inflation and long-term financial stability. So, while the idea of having the lowest interest rate sounds appealing at first glance, it invites deeper discussions about the broader implications for our economy and its sustainability in the long run. How do we balance the desire for immediate economic stimulation against the need for prudent fiscal management? It's a complex puzzle that policymakers continue to grapple with today. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that during the Great Depression, tariffs did not lead to inflation, but actually contributed to deflation? It's quite fascinating when you think about it. Instead of causing prices to soar as many might believe, the tariffs implemented during the era had a different effect altogether. They were designed to protect American industries from foreign competition, but what they ended up doing was stifling trade and reducing consumer spending power, which in turn led to falling prices across many sectors. This challenges the common narrative we often hear today, that imposing tariffs will inevitably send prices through the roof. In reality, this historical example shows us how complex economic interactions can be revealing a more nuanced relationship between tariffs and price levels than what is typically portrayed. So, the next time someone mentions tariffs and inflation in the same breath, it might be worth pausing to consider this counterintuitive lesson from the past. It's intriguing how perspectives can shift based on historical context, reminding us that economics is rarely black and white. So what can we take away from all this? It seems that the inflation data we've been grappling with isn't as ominous as some might have feared. Rather, it's revealing a sense of stability even amidst the broader economic chaos. While headlines may scream about rising prices and the potential for an economic downturn, a closer look at the flat Producer Price Index report and other key economic indicators suggest a different story. For instance, consumer spending remains robust, and wage growth has been steady, which indicates that people are still willing to spend despite their concerns about inflation. This stability could point to an economy that is adapting rather than crumbling under pressure. So, while it's natural to feel a bit anxious when we hear about price hikes in everyday goods, it's important to remember that these figures don't always tell the whole story. Instead of succumbing to panic, we might consider this a moment for cautious optimism. After all, understanding these nuances can help us navigate our financial decisions more wisely in the months ahead. And let's not forget, as we navigate these waters, it's crucial to question the narratives presented to us by mainstream media. They want us scared. They want us panicking, feeding off our fears to keep us glued to their screens and bombarded by their headlines. But informed citizens, they know better. They understand that behind every sensational story, there lies a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. Take a moment to consider how often we hear exaggerated claims about crises, whether it's health scares or political turmoil, all designed to provoke an emotional response rather than encourage thoughtful analysis. It's essential for us to sift through the noise, seek out diverse perspectives, and rely on credible sources rather than just accepting what's handed down to us. By doing so, we empower ourselves with knowledge and foster critical thinking, allowing us to navigate this complex landscape with clarity and confidence. After all, in a world flooded with information, being an active participant in our understanding is not just important, it's our responsibility as engaged members of society. Thank you for joining me today on Shawn Thinking Out Loud. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe and share it with your friends. We're building a community of informed citizens who aren't afraid to think critically about the news. And don't forget, every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, tune in for The Federalists, where we dive into the motivations behind our Constitution. I've got a wide range of books on politics, history, martial arts, and more available. Check out the link in the description. Until next time, stay informed and keep thinking out loud.